Hi, I'm Dale Weir with Caldwell Banker Gundaker. Thank you for joining me over a cup of tea to talk about real estate issues today. Today I'd like to talk about buying a home as is. Some people think that's going to be a great way to buy a home. They're going to get a bargain. Well, sometimes it's a bargain, but not always. An as-is sale means that the seller is not going to do anything to the home. If you do a building inspection, they're not going to negotiate it. If you find something wrong with the municipal inspection, they're not going to take care of it. They're not going to pay or do any of the inspections that normally a seller would be required to do. They should, but they do not always, fill out a seller's disclosure. Now, if it is a bank who owns it, then they can say, I really don't know anything about it, I got it as a foreclosure. A lot of investors will put down that they don't know anything about it. Well, if they bought it and cleaned it out and put it back on the market, they probably don't. But if that seller that they bought it from told them anything about the property, or if they saw signs when they were cleaning it out, yeah, they really do, and they really ought to know what those problems are and to tell you. If it is an estate and it is a distant relative who really didn't have contact with the person, they may not know anything. But if it's your parents and you can vaguely remember they're complaining about things, then yeah, you really ought to say those things to the buyer because they need to know them. Now, when you're buying as is, if you are good at fixing things up, wonderful. There are some homes that don't even need to be fixed up. They're in such great condition. But that's not the norm. I go into some homes where if I put a marble down the middle of the floor, it just acts like a roller coaster. I go into homes where the basement is so wet and moldy and mildewy it's a problem. I was actually in one once where at one point I thought they had carpet on this post by the bottom of the basement steps, only to realize it was totally covered in mold to the point that it looked like carpeting. You can see some where they have broken windows, some where the ceiling's falling in. In some cases, the appliances are gone. The water heater may be gone. I've even seen the air conditioner, the water heater, the electrical panel box, and all the lights in the house taken. Are you really capable of taking care of a house in that condition? Now, if the house is being sold as is because it's an estate and the new owners don't want to deal with it, then perhaps it's in decent condition. Perhaps it's just dated. But you really need to have a building inspector go through it with you and help you identify that. And even then, that's not a guarantee that everything is going to be good. Building inspector can't tear apart walls to look at things behind them. They can't take up carpet to look below it. They look for symptoms. They look to see what they can tell based on their experience, the different things that they're seeing tell them. They can often tell if there's a structural problem. They can tell if it's leaking basement, but they may not be able to tell why it's leaking. If it just needs paint and cosmetic updates, that's one thing. But if it needs a lot more, that's something else. One of the biggest issues that causes problems for buyers when they're buying as is the municipal inspections. Now, an as-is seller is not doing any of the inspections. The buyer has to pay for and do the inspections, but depending on who owns it, the buyer may not be able to fix the problems until after they own the property. This creates a catch-22 because the buyer's bank, if it's a regular mortgage, isn't going to loan them the money to do the repairs or even to buy the house until the point that they own it. If a buyer has a bank that he's buying from, and the bank owns the property, the bank's not going to let them into the house to do the repairs until they own it. But if the seller's bank that owns the house doesn't let you in to do the repairs, but your bank won't loan you the money to buy it until the point that you can get an occupancy permit that says you can move right in, catch-22. There are some specialized types of loans that can help you out. With those, they go through the house with you, with the lender, an appraiser, a contractor, your realtor, and you go through and you tell them, this is your vision. Perhaps it's all cosmetics and updates, perhaps there's some necessary repairs in there. They determine what the value of the house will be after you've done the repairs you're talking about doing. If it makes sense economically to do those repairs, then the banks will typically say, yes, we'll give you that loan. But if by the time you finish doing all the things you want to do to the house, you've priced it out the neighborhood, they're going to tell you no. You need to really understand and get some estimates first. Is it going to be $10,000 to upgrade the electrical from knob and tube to circuit breakers? Do you have to do a new water line into the house and dig up the front yard because the water line that the municipality brings the water in with is a larger one than what's inside the house? Is it a wet basement? Do you have a wall that's falling in or bowed? What are the issues? What's it going to cost to fix them? One of the things you also need to consider when you're looking at a foreclosure or some types of as-is is were they on the market before as a regular sale? Did they not sell because there was something wrong, like they priced them wrong? Or did they not sell because there was something else that affected their ability to get resold? Does it back to a busy street? Does it have no backyard or a very steep backyard? What stopped it from being sold in the first place? Because unless you can take care of that problem, it doesn't matter what you do to the house, the problem's going to be there when you go to sell. And you won't be able to sell either. And so you may end up as a foreclosure or an as-is sell as well, even after you've put money into it to fix it up. So as-is are great for some buyers who are handy, who know how to repair things, but for others you really need to think twice. Do not assume that simply because it says as-is, it's a great deal. Work with your realtor, come up with a good pricing scheme for the neighborhood, and come up with why that one is priced where it is and what's wrong with it and what it's going to cost to fix it, and if you're going to overprice it or you're going to be a fair market value when you're done. Thank you for joining me over a cup of tea today.